Hello and welcome to Lettering in Color for Skillshare, creating colorful lettering using Fudenosuke colors. I am your class instructor, Kylie Bennett of Kylie in Kentucky. I've been lettering since 2015, and in that time I have done a little bit of everything. I've sold on Etsy, I've blogged about every facet of lettering, collaborated with companies like Starbucks and Brit & Co, and in January of 2018, my first book, Super Simple Hand Lettering, hit stores across the US. My lettering practice has grown quite a bit since 2015, but just like you, I had to start somewhere, and that's where this class comes into play for you. In this class, you don't need any prior lettering experience. I'll take you through everything you need to know about using a brush pen, and by the end of this class, you will be creating lettering you are proud of using easy but impressive techniques. No worries if you don't have the exact tools I'm using throughout class. This class is sponsored by Tombow USA, so a lot of the products I'm using are provided by Tombow. If you don't have these products in your collection, I have a special 25% off discount code that is Kylie25 at checkout at www.tombowusa, so you can pick up the products that I use in class if you don't already have them. If you have any questions at all, you can of course contact me through Skillshare, but you can also reach me by email at hello@kylieinkentucky.com. I encourage you to share your class project here on Skillshare with everyone else that's taking the class, but if you're not comfortable with that, I hang out on Instagram a lot, so you can tag me at Kylie in Kentucky, and make sure to tag Tombow USA as well. And I would love for you to use the hashtag Fudenosuke colors when sharing about this class. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Before we dive into the learning portion of the class, I want to go ahead and walk you through all of the supplies that I'll be using throughout the lessons and then the class projects at the end. So first off, I've created this printable lettering workbook. It's 5 separate worksheets that take you from start to finish of getting started with using a brush pen. If you have never used one before, this will be awesome for you. And I have printed these out on regular printer copy paper, and that's fine too. But one thing to go ahead and think about is that your brush tips on your brush pen are very, very delicate, and they could fray easily on something like a copy paper. So I think that it's great to have tracing paper on hand. This is just a tracing pad from Hobby Lobby, and you can tear a piece of tracing paper out, place it onto your worksheet, and then go ahead and use it as it's intended. That way, to keep your brush pens healthy and happy and to get the most use out of them. In addition, you'll also want to have some super smooth cardstock. This is my favorite super smooth cardstock, and I've got this linked below in the product list that's in the About This Class section. Or you can pick up something that's labeled for markers. Anything that's labeled for markers is going to be really, really smooth, and this will also really protect your brush pens as well. When we're working on actually sketching our quote or our lettered piece for class projects, I've got 2 different pencils that I wanted to talk with you guys about. This first one is the Olno Swift pencil. This is from Tombow, and this is so cool. I'll show you how it works when we get into that, but this rubber grip on here just makes sketching really fun, really high quality lead, and this is a really neat pencil. The main star of the show is of course the Fudenosuke colors, which I will talk all about as we start using them in the next lesson, learning how to use a brush pen, but these are so much fun, and if you don't have these, definitely take advantage of that 25% off code that I have for Tombow and pick these up. For various parts of the class, you'll probably want to have an eraser, and this is my very favorite eraser. This is the Dust Catch Mono Eraser by Tombow, and it's called Dust Catch for a reason, if I can say it, because it actually catches your eraser dust and it leaves a lot less behind than a normal eraser. So I absolutely love this, and I can't wait to show you how this works and the magic that it is. And the last item I will be using in this class is a light box. This is from Cricut, and absolutely love this light box. There are a lot of cheaper options out there, so if you don't have a light box, don't worry about it. I will provide some alternative solutions if you don't have one of these when that part of the class comes. But just keep in mind that you don't have to spend a lot of money on a light box. There are some affordable ones that I'll try to link those for this class. In lesson 2, like I said, I'm going to teach you how to use a brush pen, and I'm going to use the Fudenosuke Colors brush pens by Tombow USA. And let's go over how you even pronounce these pens. They are Fudenosuke, just like it looks. I know it's kind of confusing, but it's a Japanese word that literally translates to brush that helps, as in helps your strokes. And these Fudenosuke brush pens have actually been around since 2001 and are extremely popular with brush lettering artists of all skill levels. They're my preferred pen to use when lettering, but the color version is a pretty big deal because these are only available in black and gray ink until September of 2018 when Tombow released the color pack. So this is a huge deal, and this is what inspired me wanting to create this class about colorful lettering. So these brush pens are actually known as small brush pens. A dual brush pen would be known as a large brush pen. So you can definitely see the difference in size. The difference in size when it comes to the tips of those pens. So this is large and this is small. That's pretty obvious. And the Fudenosuke colors are also known as hard-tipped pens. If you have ever used the Fudenosuke pens before, there's a different version called a soft tip, and the barrel looks just a little bit different. The barrel of the soft tip is black, where the barrel of the hard-tipped pens is navy. It might be kind of hard to see through the camera, but it's very obvious in person, and that's a good way to know which one you're picking up. But each of the colors in this pack is going to be a hard-tipped pen, and that's great news for you if you're a beginner, because this is an excellent pen to start with, because I find in my classes that beginners feel they have more control with the hard-tip pen than you might have with the soft tip or even with the dual brush pen. So if you're ready to go, let's go ahead and get out our worksheets that we've printed, and I'll swatch every single one of these colors as we work through our lettering worksheets and learn how to use the pen so that you can actually see them in action. Like I said before, I'm going to just take a piece of tracing paper and lay it on top of my workbook so that I can protect my pens a little bit more. And tracing paper is also so slick and smooth that it will be easier, I think, for you to letter on than just a regular cardstock, especially if you're just starting out. But if you're not just starting out, this is a great warm-up for you to go ahead and get warmed up for the class projects that we'll complete at the end. I'm going to start with the red pen in the pack to show you how to hold the brush pen. And in my opinion, there is not a wrong or a right way to do it, but really however you feel most comfortable. So I hold my brush pen slightly different than I would hold a normal pen or pencil to write. And a good rule of thumb that I always teach in my in-person classes is to hold the pen between your thumb and index finger, just like this, and then to hold it sort of at a 45-degree angle to the paper. So it's gonna be at a 45-degree angle with your paper or with your surface that you're writing on. And that way the pen rests gently in this space between your thumb and your index finger, kind of like mine is doing right now. And you can start holding your pen this way, and then if that doesn't feel really comfortable for you, then you can just adjust until you find a way that does feel comfortable. Okay, now let's actually begin lettering. What makes a brush pen and brush lettering unique? It's all in the tip of the pen. And brush lettering is consisted of upstrokes and downstrokes, which are what these first 3 lines are right here. Now, what's actually special about a brush pen and how you achieve different upstrokes and downstrokes and different thicknesses in your letters is because the tip is flexible and you can press on it and apply pressure. So if you can see that the pen is bending as I apply pressure to it. So if I barely touch the pen to the tip of the paper and drag it upward without applying any pressure at all, then I will have a really thin line, and that's an upstroke. So that's what that looks like. When I apply pressure as I'm moving down, the tip will bend and I will get a thicker line, and this is called a downstroke. So go ahead and practice creating a really thin line by barely grazing your pen across the paper when you're going in an upward motion. I'm going to practice upstrokes. And then also practice moving down and applying pressure to the tip of the pen, otherwise known as creating downstrokes. Once you are feeling pretty comfortable with creating upstrokes and downstrokes, move on to the 3rd line, and where you will alternate between creating a really thin upstroke and switching to a thick downstroke. I'm gonna go ahead and fill all this first 3 lines completely up to get warmed up, and then we can move on to the rest of the lines on this first page to start preparing ourselves for script. I also want to point out that upstrokes are especially tricky for me because I drink a lot of coffee and I have somewhat of a shaky hand. So if you find that you have a shaky hand, just know that that's normal, and know that exercises just like this will help combat that shaky hand. I find that I always have a lot more control on the downstroke because you're actually pressing that pen into the paper and it's acting as sort of an anchor. But on the upstroke, you are lightly touching it, and that can be a lot more difficult to maintain a steady line. So just know that practice for this is completely normal, and you should be practicing your strokes before you letter every time just to kind of get warmed up. And once again, you can print this worksheet out as many times as you need to, and you can use it forever if you have a pad of tracing paper or handy. So I'm gonna go ahead and fill this out, and I'll see you when you're ready to prep for script. Next, I'm going to grab the orange pen in the pack to show you how this looks as we prepare for script. These little squiggly lines here are going to help you prepare for creating continuous strokes where you'll be switching from a thin upstroke to a thick downstroke, especially when you're writing in script. When you're writing in just a print alphabet like we'll do after we do this exercise, you won't have to worry about that as much as far as creating continuous strokes, but it's still good to do as a warm-up. So go ahead and grab your pen and start tracing the squiggly line. So the reason why this first little line here, even though we're moving down, isn't thick is because I'm really preparing for how I write in script, which is I always have a little beginner line that leads into the letter that isn't necessarily thick or thin, it's just sort of a decorative line. So you can make that thick if you would like to, and let's go ahead and start tracing that. So you're gonna start your thick downstroke. When we transition up, we're going to release all pressure on the pen, and then as we go over that hump and transition down again, you're going to apply pressure and get a thick line. This definitely takes a lot of practice to achieve the first time. If you need to take a breath and go back into it, then that's perfectly fine. But just remember, anytime your pen is moving in an upward motion or away from your body, you're going to release all pressure and just barely graze your pen across the paper. As you start to feel that your pen is moving back down towards your body, press, apply pressure, and you'll get a thick stroke. So if you can, just continue this line. Go as slow as you need to go. As you can see, I'm going pretty slow. And now as we move down, we're going to be transitioning from making one level of strokes here to going to different heights, but it's the exact same idea. You're just going to be moving a little bit more on the upstroke. Go all the way up and then down. Same idea. On our upstroke, we're barely applying any pressure until we move downward, and we're pressing our pen to achieve a thicker stroke. It's kind of fun once you get going on a roll. Great. Okay, I think we're ready to actually move on and begin creating letters. Grab my yellow pen here to start creating our print alphabet. And if you are feeling a little bit intimidated and unsure of how you're going to know when to do a thin upstroke or when to do a thick downstroke, don't worry, because I'm going to show you. Upstrokes and downstrokes happen naturally in our handwriting all the time. We just never think about it. So creating your print alphabet here, I'll walk you through knowing exactly when to do that. Really, when you make your upstroke, it's the exact same as the exercises. If your pen is moving away from your body or in an upward motion, then you are going to barely apply any pressure, just like so. And as you round that curve, you're going to apply pressure to get that thick downstroke. And then as you go side to side, because that happens often in letters, it's going to be a thin stroke as well. So the only time that you are applying pressure and getting a thick stroke is when you are moving down. So starting with this lowercase a, we're going to start where you would normally start, creating an A. I'm first moving to the side, so I'm going to apply no pressure until I start curving downward, going to apply pressure, release it as I come up, and apply it again as I move down. Let's go through it again. Starting with this B, first stroke that I would naturally make when creating a B is this big stroke right here. I'm going to move down and apply pressure. Then for these curves, going to barely apply any moving up as I transition down, apply pressure, transitioning down, apply pressure, and release it. Down, up, down, up. Up, down, up, up, down, up. I'm going to go ahead and grab my green pen to finish tracing this, and I will simply speed this up maybe just a little bit, trace through the rest of the print alphabet so you can see how it's done, and then we'll meet back up when we're ready to start working on script alphabet, which comes next. And I forgot to mention that the spaces in between these letters are actually meant for you to then create your own out beside it without tracing. So if there's a letter that you're finding you have a little bit more trouble with, then after you trace it, you can even move your tracing paper over to then trace it again. But I encourage you to go out to the side and to practice creating it on your own without tracing. Now that you've gone through print alphabet and even numbers, I'm going to grab the purple pen from the Fudenosuke Colors pack and start tracing over our script alphabet and showing you how to use the brush pen to create script lettering. Once again, it's the exact same idea as print alphabet and as the upstroke and downstroke exercises that you did. You are going to start where you would naturally start and keep in mind what direction is your pen moving. It's going up. It's going to be a thin stroke. If it's going down, you're going to apply pressure and create a thick stroke. And then once again, side to side, it's gonna be a thin stroke as well. And right here, I don't know if you can see it, but I kind of messed up. Let me see if I can show you. If you can see right here, I kind of messed up a little bit, and that isn't a perfect transition. If that happens, you can just take the tip of your pen and just kind of go over it until it's evened out. And that's a trick that will be good for you to know throughout your lettering practice. But continuing on, it's the exact same idea, just with a couple extra lines, because script lettering, it's just a little bit fancier than print. If you're feeling a little bit confused on where to begin creating your letters, then my suggestion is just to follow what I'm doing here in this video, and you can watch it as many times as you need to watch it. And you can take your own kind of cursive script writing and apply it here as well. Try tracing, and then try creating the letters on your own. I'm going to go ahead and trace through this, and I'll see you when we are done. Now I'm ready to move on with actually creating words, and these are going to be script words because print words are pretty straightforward. Print alphabet, you don't have to do a lot of work to put a word together with the basic alphabet template that I've given you. But for script, people are often a little bit intimidated by how do you connect script letters together. So let's go ahead and just dive right in. I've got the pink pen. This is my absolute favorite color of the Fudonosuke pens. And I'm just going to start by tracing this A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. You could continue it down the line if you wanted to, or you can just trace. So starting with A, we're just going to start with a capital here, which you learned. This is the exact A from the practice sheet. And then you can either connect your next letter to the capital or not. It doesn't really matter. As you'll see on the next page, I kind of do it just depending on what the letter is, but let's just jump right into B. And then you're going to connect your letters just like you would in cursive. Just going to do a little thin stroke to connect the B to the C. Then I'm gonna move right into the D, and I'm gonna stop right there and then create my D normally. So whereas in cursive, you're encouraged to keep your pen on the paper and to never release your pen until you're done writing the word. Now, cursive is for effectiveness, I guess, or it's for speed and for writing things quickly, but brush lettering is not about speed. It's not about going fast. It's about taking your time and creating really beautiful letters. So it's perfectly acceptable to pick your pen up, and if anyone tells you that it's not, then they clearly don't understand that art is supposed to be fun and relaxing and not stressful. So do what you want to do. So once again, to connect the D to the E, I'm just making this little thin stroke, little upstroke, and then just moving right into my D, starting it, or into my E, starting it where I would naturally start it. So really, I think the point is you can just use these little strokes to transition into the next one. And I did not transition my G right into my H because I like doing these little fun flourishes at the bottom, like this. And I also like doing my flourish at the top of the H like this. But if you didn't want to do that, let's see if you're writing the word enough, for instance, which has an GH combination. So you can see I'm just using this little stroke right here to connect. So if you wanted to connect your G and your H, you can just do that right there. And that's how you would do that. But I like adding a little flair here. So it's really up to you, and it's all about personal style. Okay, we've got 3 more colors in the pack here to swatch. So I will go ahead and do the word balloon in pink. And then I will go ahead and speed this up a little bit, and you can watch what I'm doing and see how I am creating these words. And I'll swatch the rest of the remaining colors in the Funonosuke pack. And then when we're done, we'll be ready to start moving on to the next lesson, which is really exciting. In this lesson, I want to talk about sketching and getting a quote ready to actually use the brush pens and to create a beautiful colored lettering piece. And for this, I've got just a regular piece of copy paper to sketch on. You can sketch on marker paper, you can sketch on cardstock, whatever you want, but I just grabbed a sheet of copy paper. I've got the Tombow Dust Catch Eraser, and I've got the Tombow Ulno Swift Mechanical Pencil. And also, I have it in a couple different colors as well. So these are just fun pencils to have. And you can, have a couple. I keep one at my desk, one in my travel bag that I take with me to a coffee shop or out and about just in case. And then this one, I'm gonna let my husband have this one to take to school because he does drafting. What I love about this pencil, what's really cool about it, is that you don't have to switch your grip when you need more lead. So usually, a normal mechanical pencil, you have to switch your grip and you have to press more lead out by pushing on the end. But with the Olno Swift pencil, you just move your thumb back, or that's how I have to do it because I guess I have no hand strength. But you just press on the barrel and it kind of bends and then more lead comes out the top. So I think that is super cool. And this is a really fine lead, which I prefer for sketching, and that's why I'm using it in this lesson. When you are picking out a quote or a phrase to then make into a full lettered piece, you have to start by sketching out that phrase on your sketch paper. And it's really hard for me to share all of the tips and tricks and things that I have learned over 3 years of lettering, because a lot of the sketching thing is trial and error and is doing, and it's intuitive after a while. After you've been lettering for as long as I have, the sketching process becomes so easy and quick and fast and fun. So I hope that everything in this lesson today will help you out. The first thing I want to talk about is creating something called thumbnails, and I'm sure you've heard of these before, but what thumbnails are is just little mini ideas, mini options that you have for how your final lettered piece is going to be laid out. So the quote that I'm choosing for today is, "Life is art, live yours in color." This is the quote that we're going to use for both of our class projects through 2 different techniques, and I'll have that up here while we're sketching so that you can keep that in mind. And I am going to just write it out up here to help me. This color, whoops, life is art, live yours in color. Okay, so just writing that out, I hope you can see that. On the paper, I'm gonna circle a couple of words that aren't important. So is and in are not important, and yours is probably not as important, but life, art, live, and color, those are the big words that I want to emphasize when I'm sketching. So I'm just going to create a couple of thumbnails, and you can do this however you want. You can draw squares, you can draw rectangles, you can draw a circle. I like to usually letter within a rectangle or a square, even though it might not look like it in my final piece. That's kind of what I like to have. Now I'm just going to use my regular handwriting for this. I'm not going to worry about lettering fancy at this point in time. So I might want to do life at the top is art, live and I like how this thumbnail looks already because it seems like I've already got balance. I've got live and color are kind of even, and then yours in fits nicely in between these two, and then life is art, not loving that. So let's try doing life is art on one line. Life is art, live yours in color. And that's, I mean, that's pretty boring, but you've got all of your letters evenly spaced out. And once again, this is just sketching. This is just getting some options down. This is not going to look like our final piece at all. But once we have a layout that we're happy with, we can then move on to putting it with script writing and with print and using the brush pen. So I think I like the bottom of this one better. So I'm going to go ahead and carry this down. Live yours in color. And I think I'm going to do life is art. And maybe we'll add some embellishments here to really get that balance too. Let's try one more. And let's just kind of freehand this one. I'm just going to freehand this one because that's more my style. Live yours. And this is more my style. I normally don't do things so balanced and so even, but if one of these works better for you, I definitely encourage you to take one of those thumbnails into our actual lettered piece when we are ready to start working on class projects. But I think for me, something a little bit more free and a little less structured is going to be more along the lines of my style. And I've also got things at a diagonal. Where things were more in straight lines here, I've got things turned on their side just a little bit, because to me, what makes my lettering me and what makes it unique is that things are usually not in a straight line and they're not perfect and they look a little bit wonky, and I like that. So that's just a short little talk about thumbnails. You could fill up a whole page of thumbnails where you are trying out different things, trying out how you would like your piece to be laid out. One thing to always be mindful of is just balance. Does it look balanced? Because even if something's not in a straight line like this, it still looks like it has some balance to it. And layout really can be improved by just creating a whole sheet of thumbnails, practicing this a lot, and not being intimidated by the blank sheet of paper, just diving in and doing it and getting practice. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to just take this sort of like freestyle look into our sketch paper where we're actually going to start preparing for our first class project. Okay, so I've got my marker pad. I'm just going to flip it open. And just looking at my thumbnail, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 lines. So I'm gonna just put this to the side so I can look at it as I'm sketching. Now I need to figure out how large is my piece going to be. And if you've ever seen any of my work, I like to do things on like the side of the paper, not really on in the direct middle of the paper. That's just my style. You can do yours wherever you'd like. Mine's gonna be about this big. That is the perfect size for me. Perfect size for me to put all of this in here to feel like it's going to be large enough for me to get those techniques across in our class project, but not so big that I'm like struggling and having a hard time fitting everything close together. And that's once again just personal preference. If you want to fill up this whole page, I want you to go for it. So, okay, just start sketching. You can always erase, go back, change things. This is not set in stone. This is just a sketch. And I'm going to go ahead and start applying my script to this. And my script is just a cursive script that I like to use, but you are encouraged to use the exact same cursive or script writing that was in the workbook, or if you'd like to use print, you can also use that. I'm going to mix script and print, I think, for this. So that's going to be in print, because I want the less important words to not stick out as much as these big important words are in script. Life is art. And right now I'm seeing, which my eye is just naturally trained to it, I think, but I'm seeing where things are gonna fit together. Like this T is gonna come out beside this F because there's some free space. And once again, I'm gonna go back and fix this, but be mindful of free space and of filling things up as you're going. So live. I think I'm already gonna run out of room. Let's do print. And I'm just gonna follow the shape, this right here, to make it a little bit fun, quirky. And then I'm gonna fill up color. Okay, so that's a super rough sketch. Let's go over it. And what I like to do is I like to just go back on top of this directly and just make a darker line and fix some things up. So I'm gonna move this life up just a little bit. I'm not gonna make the bottom of this F so pronounced. So I gotta make a little bit of room because I ran out of room down here. Life is looks like a hot mess, but this is how I like to do it. Don't be afraid to make a mess on the paper. Oops! This lead is delicate, let me tell you. Okay. Live. Need to make sure that period doesn't get lost there either. And I'm just going to kind of move these letters up and make them a little bit larger in some cases to fit and fill up some of this room. And I'm going to change color to kind of follow the curve of this bottom line here. Still gonna keep it in print, it's still gonna be bold, but I want it to kind of follow Let's see, I'm gonna use, look at that, there's no eraser dust. That's what I love about this eraser. It catches all of the eraser dust. I think that's what I want for this first class project. Now, I'm gonna be using the same quote for the second class project, and I'm just gonna stick with this sketch. And I think it's gonna look really neat with both of the techniques that we're gonna show off in our class. For the first class project, using the first technique that I'm teaching, I've got my Cricut bright pad out that I'm going to use to actually transfer my sketch onto the final piece of paper that I want my piece to go on, which is a super smooth cardstock. And I've got this linked below. So I'm going to just turn my bright pad on and place the paper where I want it to be. And like I said before, I kind of like things to be off a little bit. So I sketched this on the bottom left corner originally, and I would totally be fine with it going in the bottom left corner, but now I kind of think I want it in the top right corner. So that's me changing my mind, but wherever you want to place yours will look awesome. Okay, and then I am using all of the colored pens from the Fudano Suki pack. So just as a quick reminder, this is what the pack looks like, and then the only colors I'm not using are the brown, gray, and black, but I'll be using the gray and the black in my next class project, so you'll get to see those as well. For this class project, we're creating what I call a rainbow lettering gradient, which means we're going to create a rainbow gradient starting from the left and moving all the way to the right. And you can use whichever colors you want from the pack. You could do just maybe some of the warmer colors, or you could do the cooler colors. Either way would look great, but I want to take advantage and use all of these colors. So I'm going to position these in the order that I want the transition to move in. So I want to start with red, pink, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. So that's the transition of the gradient. I want to start with red over here, and I want to end with purple. And how we're going to do that is we're going to actually place our markers right below or on top. We're gonna take the red out because I don't think it's gonna fit. That's one thing to also be mindful of when you're creating a rainbow lettering gradient, is how large your piece is determines how many markers you can really use, how many colors you can use, and it's still to look natural, and every color kind of gets a moment in the spotlight, if that makes sense. So I think this will be good enough. Now how I'm gonna do this is I'm just gonna take my pencil and I'm just gonna draw a line. Oops, this is my final piece of paper, y'all. Whew, okay. Almost had disaster, but we stopped it. Make a line right here. And I'm gonna write P right above this to denote that that's where my pink is gonna go. We can actually turn this off. Then my orange is going to be from there to there. So now I know where all my colors should start and where they should end, and I promise this is gonna make sense when we start getting into it. So I'm gonna use my beautiful eraser. Guys, there's like one piece of dust. I cannot with this eraser. It's too good, it's too good. Okay, so let's turn on our bright pad. If you don't have one of these, there's a lot of ways you can do this. You could letter directly on top of your sketch and then use a really nice eraser to erase it. I do that all the time. I did that for years before I got a bright pad. It works perfectly. You can use the same method of having a light source beneath your sketch to illuminate through your final piece of paper by holding them both up to a window. You could tape them up where you want them to be and just stand and do your lettering that way. I've done that before. If you have a glass coffee table or something like that, you can put your phone flashlight beneath and it'll work the same way as the light box. So there are alternatives and options, but if you don't have either of those things, simply drawing or lettering on top of your sketch and erasing the pencil beneath it works great. Lots of people do it. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with pink. So we see our line here. We see that everything to the left of this line is going to be pink. So now is when we actually take our brush pen and we're going to letter everywhere to the left of that first line. And that means we are going to be cutting off some of our letters here because the top of this L goes into orange territory. So we're going to stop there. And this can be a little bit tricky if you're not really used to brush pen lettering yet, and upstrokes and downstrokes and all of that stuff, but I promise I will walk you through it and you will be a pro with this. So we're gonna go ahead, start on our upstroke and make a thin line. And I'm gonna stop where that line is for orange. I'm just gonna leave that be, and I'm gonna come up here and finish my L. I know that this is a downstroke, so I'm gonna press, apply pressure, and I'm gonna get a nice thick line. And it wasn't as smooth as I wanted it to be, so I'm just gonna go down through here and just use the tip of my pen to smooth it out and to make sure that it looks good. And that is not cheating. You can do that. Now I'm going to move on down the line, and all we have left here is our A. So I'm gonna go ahead and create my A. I'm gonna stop where that line is. And I believe that is all we've got for pink. Actually, I think my line was a little bit crooked, so here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna extend my line to match where this L stops. Just like that. So now the L and the A kind of stop in the same area. And we've got a little of this C in here too, so we'll go ahead and make that. Now we're ready to move on to orange. I'm gonna pick up my orange pen. And we're going to move into orange territory, and we're going to fill in everywhere that there is supposed to be orange. And now this is where you'll find there's a little bit of blending involved in making the transition from one color to another work. And how you do that is you simply just take your pen and go back and forth where that transition is until it looks smooth, and I promise it actually works pretty quickly. Once again, I'm gonna stop where the yellow is supposed to begin and then do just a little bit of blending to make that transition look good. Move on down. Okay, done with orange. Now time to move into the yellow. Gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna go ahead and speed this up a little bit and finish the rest of the gradient, and you can follow along and see how I'm doing everything, but you pretty much should have the hang of it by now. So I'll see you when it is completed. And there you have it. That's how you create the easiest rainbow lettering gradient ever. This is so easy, but it looks so impressive, and you get a chance to utilize all of the colors in the Fudenosuke pack that you want to. If you wanted to go from start to finish using every color in the pack, you could absolutely do that, and it would look fantastic. So let's go ahead and move on to the second class. For the second class project, I've got the exact same setup as the first, where I've got my sketch underneath on top of the light box, and I've got my final piece of paper here on top. For this lesson, I'm only going to be using the red, orange, gray, and black colors from the Fudenosuke pack to create this really awesome, dynamic, blended but 3D lettering look that is so fun and super cool to create. Now, to create this blended lettering look, I want to start with my lightest color. And that's really the key here, no matter which color combinations you're using, is to start with the lightest color first. So if you were using green and yellow, you would want to start with your yellow first. If you were using blue and green, you'd want to start with your green first. We want our darker color to work as the shading, and you'll see what I mean once we get started. So I'm going to set these to the side, and I'm just going to go in and I'm going to trace over this entire piece with my orange, which is my lighter color of the two that I'm using. I'm going to go ahead and speed this up, and I will catch up with you when it is all finished and we're ready to move on to shadowing. And that was actually all we needed our light box for, because from here on out, we're just gonna be using our pens to create the blended 3D lettering look. So you've traced over the sketch in your lightest color, gonna take your darker color of the pear, and we're gonna use that same little technique that we did in the rainbow lettering gradient, where we're gonna take the tip of the pen and just kind of lightly add in some blending or some shadowing. And I'm just gonna start. There is no rhyme or reason really to where I'm going to add this shadowing in. You'll kind of see where I'm placing it as we go through, but I'm going to go in at the top of the letter, and I'm just going to lightly add a little bit of darker color to the top of my lettering, trying to stay within the lines as best as possible. And I'm going to do this kind of wherever I feel that some natural shadowing should go. It's kind of hard to pick it out, but wherever you put it, it's gonna look really good. So let's do top and bottom. And I'm gonna move through the whole piece and do this for every letter, and then go back in to my third step. Okay, now you can see we've added a little bit of shadowing in there, but it's not completely blended. So that's why we're gonna go back in with our lighter color, and we're going to make sure all of this is blended out. And using your lighter color to blend things out really makes it look super natural, and the transition will look more smooth and even. So you're just gonna take the tip of your lighter color, just gonna gently Trace over it, rub over it a couple times, and then feel free to extend that lighter color down a little bit farther into your lettering, because even going over your original lettering another time with that lighter color is going to create extra dimension and extra shadow. Now we're going to add in the three-dimensional factor that can only be achieved with the gray and the black pen out of the Fudenosuke pack. So first things first, we're going to take our gray, we're starting again with our lighter of the two, and we're going to add a little shadow to the left of all of these letters. This can be, once again, kind of tricky to figure out where am I supposed to put this shadow, but I always say to the left of the letters. So I'm going to start over here. You're going to go actually out to the side. You're not going to trace on top of this letter. You're going to go directly to the side and you're going to add a shadow. And I like to use my brush pen just the way it's intended, and I like to apply pressure on that downstroke to make sure that the thickness of the shadow actually matches the letter. Now once again, I'm going to go inside of this L to the left right here. I'm going to add another shadow. It doesn't have to be precise, going to the left of this, the left of this inside. Feel free to follow along with me if you're feeling a little bit confused on where these shadows are supposed to go. It can be somewhat confusing. But just pretend like your light source is coming from this direction. You've got a lamp shining on these letters, and the shadows are going to fall to the left. Once again, whoops, I already messed up a little bit. Once again, you don't have to, this doesn't have to be precise. So it's going to look really neat no matter what. And honestly, people aren't really going to know if you mess up on a couple of letters. I always do that. I still post things online that aren't totally correct, and no one's ever said anything about it. Maybe they're just being nice, but I promise precision isn't the most important thing here. Okay, I'll speed this up and see you when we're done. Okay, after adding our gray, we just have one final step until this technique is complete, and that's to take our darker pen or our black pen of the pair, and we are going to add in yet another line of shadows that's just going to bump this up an extra notch. So right where you've added your gray line, you are going to add a black line close to the letter. Just like that. So your gray is acting as the shadow that's extending outward, and your black line is showing how dark that shadow is close to that letter. It's just adding a little dimension to it and making it pop even more. So I'll go ahead and speed this up and then we can see what it looks like once we're all done. And now we're done. You've added some really cool shadowing and shading to the letters that just takes it up a notch and makes it look super, super cool. And I promise these are really easy techniques that are going to impress everybody you know when they see them. I can't wait to see what you have done with these class projects, to see your take on them and your spin on them. And I'm so excited. I hope that you love these. I have so much fun. I do these techniques all the time for fun, or to post online, or to make even thank you notes and greeting cards using these techniques. And they are so easy, but they impress. Thank you so much for joining me for Lettering in Color. This is my first class on Skillshare and I had so much fun teaching it, and I hope you had even more fun taking the class. Don't forget that you can pick up everything I used in class today by checking out the resources list in the About This Class section of the page. I also have that awesome 25% off discount code for Tombow. That's Kylie25 at checkout. That's all listed below, so there's no excuse for you not to pick up some of your favorite things from class. And like I said, I want to see what you created, so definitely share it here on Skillshare. Share it on Instagram. Make sure to tag me at Kylie in Kentucky, tag Tombow at Tombow USA, and use the hashtag Furunosuki Colors so we can find you. Can't wait to see what you make.